Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Art of Feeling Better. So how are you feeling this week? Have you stopped to activate the power of the pause? Had a little bit of a reset? Have you even thought about how you're feeling this week? Because if you don't know how it is that you're feeling, then how on earth do you start to feel better? It's an ongoing process, isn't it? And it's that process of becoming more self-aware and becoming more emotionally intelligent, which is my big passion. And of course, we can't do that without engaging in some of the scary shadow work. Now, you should know by now, if you've been following my story, my own journey, and my teachings, that shadow work is my special superpower. And although it sounds like it's something really scary and something to be avoided at all cost, the irony is it is actually the thing that we need to head into. We have to move towards it. And we have to look at our shadow selves. Grasp the beast head first. And it makes such a difference, and the impact ripples out into absolutely every area of your life. One of the biggest challenges for me is working with so many people. And obviously it's easy once you've been through your own journey, or you've been through part of your own journey, because it doesn't stop, guys, never stops. But when you have kind of experienced certain things and you have found profound difference and profound impact in your own life, and you can see in your family, in your friendship group, in your community, people struggling and suffering with whatever it is they're going through, and you just know what a massive, life-changing, just ridiculous difference doing some of this work would do. But at the same time, when you're in that space and you remember what it's like to be in that space, it's a Herculean task. It is a monumental task to even think about anything, to even get out of bed in the morning, to even consider shifting perspective or doing something different. So yeah, it's a really difficult challenge to try and create that sense of safety and create that ability to pause and assess, so that you can actually just get out of your own head for a second and look at maybe a slightly different direction to move in. And that's my challenge, really, because not only is engaging in shadow work something that people don't want to do because it sounds horrible, something that people don't want to do because when they realise that they actually have to look at themselves and be accountable and actually admit that maybe some of the stuff that's going on for them is actually their own doing. Nobody wants to do any of those things. So yeah, my purpose in life is to help people to do that. So it couldn't be any more of a challenging role, could it really? Well, I'm sure it could. There's plenty of challenging roles out there. But yeah, you see where I'm going with that. It can be quite tough. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today, and one of the most powerful ways to be able to do this kind of work, is through storytelling. And I have some absolutely incredible friends who are going to be joining me as guests who specialise in the art of storytelling. And yes, it's a real thing. People, again, language, same language as when we look at shadow work, and we instantly repel from that because it seems like something that's the stuff of nightmares. Storytelling, we think storytelling, a lot of the time the immediate image we have in our brains is kindergarten, nursery school, sitting on some cushions listening to the teacher tell us a story. Maybe we think of a specific story, maybe it's Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or Rapunzel, or something Disney, or Grimm's fairy tales. For me, that was the immediate image that cropped up when I hear the word storytelling. But then when you actually start to again, like everything, scratch below the surface, dig a bit deeper, you start to realise that there's immense power in our capacity as human beings to tell stories. And we have been gifted as a species, the only species gifted with language. The part of our brains that's developed, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for linguistics, language, logic, reasoning. Not all creatures have that. And with that, I'm going to sound like, with great power comes great responsibility. But it's true. We have this gift. And there is a massive responsibility that goes with that, with being able to have language at our disposal. And I've spoken a lot of times when I've spoken on the stage, when we've done our events and our shows, about words being weapons. And I have workshops that I've done with young people, cool, fun ones, of course, to try and drive home the fact that language is such an important facet of us as humans. And our words are weapons and they're really powerful, and we can use them to heal or we can use them to harm. And if you look back in time, sort of generations gone by, our ancestors, storytelling is one thing that seems to run through everything, every culture, every country, every group of people. We all have an element of storytelling that's passed down. So whether that's round the fire, ancient civilizations sharing their wisdom and sharing their how they live and their recipe for a life well lived, and their warnings and their goals and their just their wisdom to the next generation, and how that gets passed down. Beautiful storytelling that we seem to have lost the art of, to the grandfather or the grandmother that sits with the grandchild on their knee and tells them the stories of when they were a little girl and what things were like 40, 50 years ago, to the person in work in your office when you come in on a Monday morning and you all sit around the coffee machine and there's stories around what's happened to the weekend and embellishments on the truth sometimes, and gossip, part of the storytelling process. And of course, schools, education, subject close to my heart, as you will know. The stories that we tell in schools and in educational settings, they are powerful. Words are so powerful. And when you understand the brain and neuroscience, and you understand brain waves connected to learning and how we are influenced by language, you really do start to understand how powerful the education system is and how important it is to get the stories right and the narratives right for a life well lived. My personal opinion, again, being clever and careful with my own language here, around today's society and out the structures that are in place, is that the narrative, the language and the stories that we are subjected to and that we eat up through the media and through the school system and through just our culture, are not particularly conducive to our physical, mental or emotional health and well-being. We're no longer passed down the stories that help us to thrive, that help us to survive even. We're not passed down the tools, the methods, the strategies and the stories that we need to live holistically and well balanced, to connect in with our environment, to connect in with our community, with our families. The stories and the narratives that we are subjected to on a daily basis now are around separation, division, conflict. They're around being better, doing more, striving for excellence, achieving, attaining, never quite hitting the mark, never quite feeling good enough, judging others and being judged, because it perpetuates and it keeps us in this space of never quite feeling good enough, never quite feeling safe or comfortable in our own bodies, and always needing something else, whether that's needing a distraction, whether that's needing something to help us suppress the uncomfortable sensations, because it's great business. That where there is a challenge or a problem caused, there is an excellent opportunity to sell a solution. Just rewind that and play it back if you didn't catch it the first time. This is how it works. This is how our society works nowadays, and there's many of us. I've got some really good friends out there globally who call bullshit out at 50 paces and understand and have understood for a long time and kind of really challenge that way of thinking and that way of doing things. And unfortunately, years ago, these people didn't end well, shall we say. A lot of the women were burned and drowned, and a lot of incredible people, men and women, were put in asylums, lobotomized. Free thinking and critical thinking and discernment is a dangerous game. So, but things are changing now, aren't they? Things are changing, and we're moving into spaces where everybody's starting to have these conversations, and everyone's starting to kind of test the water a little bit and starting to create content and share stories, and whether it resonates, whether it hits, whether people want to hear those stories is completely personal choice. And whichever way you choose to go and whatever hits and lands with you, then that is right for you. My only wish for people is that they feel safe in their bodies and that they feel well, that they feel peace, that they feel joy, that they feel happiness, they feel fulfillment, and that they feel like they are living their life in authentic alignment with who they're meant to be. That's my only wish, however that happens, whichever direction you move in, whoever helps you with that, however that looks for you. Sometimes what we find is people are absolutely angry and traumatized and very, very unhappy with their lives, and yet the way things work is they still challenge the solutions, and you know, that's not what I've been taught, that's not what my belief system is, that's not the story I've been told. So I don't want to go anywhere near that. I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to ridicule that. I'm going to judge that. But I would say if you're not feeling great and if your life isn't lining up the way you want it to, then perhaps it's time to start that critical thinking, and maybe it's time to just open your mind slightly. Maybe it's time to look in other directions and just explore. There's nothing wrong with exploring, is there? There's nothing wrong with, you know, finding as much information as you can on as many different topics as you can, and then using your own brain, your own mind to critically assess and discern what feels right for you, and what is truth for you is truth for you. As long as it makes you feel good and lights you up, winning, absolutely winning. That's all I want. That's all I want for people. But in terms of powerful storytelling, and as always, this is the art of feeling better, right? So we need to have a look at all the different strategies, tools, techniques that can help you feel better in real time, right? This is about building a toolkit together and sharing stories, sharing techniques, sharing, you know, the links to people as well. You know, when I have guests on, I'm sharing links so you can sort of explore and meet and connect in with other people who have different viewpoints and are doing different things. And storytelling for me is really exciting because it's starting to really come into the arena now in terms of in business, in marketing. You'll see it a lot. There's lots of training around the power of storytelling, which again is makes my radar go off slightly because I think, storytelling can be used for good or bad. And again, if it's used for selling, it's working out how you can ethically and authentically use storytelling to solve the problem. And if you're not creating that problem in the first place in order to make money to solve it, then, you know, okay, that's cool. Everyone needs to be able, I'm doing it myself, you know, I'm creating stories and monetizing certain aspects so that I can feed my children and pay my bills while helping people. But I don't believe that I've been part of the problem in the first place that's caused it so that I can make money. So that's the sort of the fairness and the balance, isn't it? But marketing massively is used. It's the power of storytelling. And how it works is, again, go back to brain science. We're looking at connecting language and emotion. So it's drawing out an emotional response through the power of words. So you'll know that when you see, for example, you might watch a movie and it really gets you. You're not in that space, but you absolutely have this flood of emotion and this neurotransmitters, this brain chemistry that affects how you feel in your body, and you might cry, or, you know, it's powerful stuff. So it creates this chemistry, this flood of chemicals. So again, everyone's favourite party guest, dopamine. Dopamine rushes, right? Everyone wants more dopamine. Oxytocin, you know, the love hormone. When you start to have these emotional responses, there's a flood of these kind of chemicals in your system. And just that very act of emotionally connecting with a story helps to build social connections, helps to build empathy, helps to build compassion, helps to build understanding so that we can gain clarity and look at different viewpoints. You know, however we choose to tell a story, it's that neural mirroring, it's called, so that you have your brain lights up as if you're actually there. So if you're retelling a story, you can feel those physical sensations in your body as if you're actually experiencing it. And if you're hearing a powerful story from somebody else, you will get that brain chemistry. You will feel it in your body, that sense of empathy. It's neural mirroring. Studies have been done to show how the brain lights up. You're not in that space at all. There's actually there's some little tricks and tools that I do in workshops actually to kind of bring the point home that you can, just by the power of words, somebody explaining something to you, you can actually have a physical response to something. It's called the lemon convincer, where you go through a specific set of language describing a lemon, and people actually have a physical response. You know, saliva, the glands start to produce saliva, and you can see people actually doing this with their face when you actually talk them through the process of cutting open a lemon. And you might even be finding it now. I'm talking about lemons, but there's no lemon in the room. You're not actually in the presence of a lemon, but your brain understands what lemon is, and it understands what that means, and the power of language activates a response in your body that connects in with your memory of lemon. So it kind of just shows the neurobiology behind that. And if you take that a step further and you think about how powerful it is with mental health and well-being in general, the power to be able to articulate and tell your story can never be underestimated. Now, many people struggle to find the language and struggle even if they have the language in their head to actually get it out. So there are so many ways. There's so many ways to storytell, and we're going to explore that over the coming weeks in episodes with some of my friends who specialise in storytelling. But you only have to, to think about it for a few minutes to understand, okay, the written word, creative storytelling, you can write and write and write and write, get these stories out of your brain and onto paper. It's really powerful. Poetry, you can start to detach slightly from the accuracy. Sometimes when you are accurately telling a story that's really emotive to you, it's still too much, but you can put it slightly, remove it into poetry, so it's slightly metaphoric. Same with songwriting, write a song, write a rap, and it kind of takes that story element and it brings it out of you, and it's a creative expression of that story. Again, metaphor is great, using metaphor, creating characters. I've worked with so many people in the past who have created characters. I worked with a few young people actually a few years ago before lockdown in different schools in Wales. So these people didn't know each other, and they had a similar approach. And I was working with them because they were struggling in the traditional classroom setting. Like, who doesn't? But it's another story. But these kids were really, really having a tough time, and they were obviously, as you can imagine, and as we already know, deeply traumatized, and the teacher just didn't have that kind of training and awareness in trauma and in ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And so straight away you can kind of, if you know what you're doing, and if you know your stuff, you understand what's going on for these young people, and that behavior is simply communication. Again, it's storytelling, it's communicating something, an unmet need or something that's happened, not being able to have another way to express that. So I'm going to just flip a chair through a window, or I'm going to be really aggressive, or I'm going to go completely into shutdown and not even respond to anyone. And if you know what you're looking for, it's communication. So it's communicating an unmet need, and the great way of being able to help people move through that is some way of storytelling. But you have to find, or you have to create the safety and the space to support that person to find their storytelling way. Does that make sense? You can't say, as you normally would if you're instructing somebody, right? Everybody's going to write a 2-page essay on their deepest personal emotional experiences. On pick your worst trauma, and I want you to write a 1,000-word essay describing it all in detail. That might work for some people. That might work really well, but you can't have that prescriptive approach that's like, everyone do that. It has to be helping somebody find their way to storytell. And quite often I come across people who believe that, like I said at the beginning, the connotations with that storytelling and anything creative is silly, it's childish. They're taught to move away from that. Logic and reasoning is the only way, and it's so damaging to your health. So sometimes you have to open up and help people to explore the thought of even doing something like creative, and break down the barriers around their representation of storytelling and creativity to begin with before you can get anywhere. Some people naturally light up when you give them the opportunity. You just have to provide a pen and paper sometimes and some safety, and that is enough. People just light up. But that's how powerful it is. And this young person, this group, they all had a very similar approach when we created that space, using anime, cosplay, characters, so cartoon, storyboarding, animated characters, spending a lot of time creating a character and giving them characteristics. And then when it comes to cosplay and anime, things like that, actually embodying that and creating costumes and creating makeup and hairstyles and all of these things. But it was an instinctive therapeutic approach, so we just kind of nurtured and supported that. But as the characters built and the stories built, it was quite obvious that the stories that were coming out were disclosures about that person's experiences. So you have to be very, very careful in these situations and pay attention and support and take the appropriate action. And not that you need a safeguarding lesson, but there's a lot of safeguarding measures in place for this kind of thing. But it was really, really interesting, and it was really the feedback was incredible, because some of these young people that I work with just would not work with anybody at all. But you open the door and you give someone the key to unlock something in a safe space, and storytelling, is such a universally powerful way to do that. And of course, you can do the circle, you can do storytelling circles, and everybody can talk, and that's cool. That's brilliant. That's a lovely way to do it. But you have to feel safe to be able to do that. And some people don't feel safe to do that. And some people will be watching this now and going, the thought of sitting in a circle and having sort of a talking stick, sharing, it fills people with absolute horror, anxiety, and dread. It's such a powerful tool. It's such a powerful technique, and it's really, really cathartic and really therapeutic to be able to be in a space where you can trust and feel safe enough to actually share something. But at the same time, it's not for everybody, and it's certainly not a starting point for a lot of people. It can take time to build towards that kind of thing. Whether it's powerful or not is irrelevant if it doesn't work for you, right? So, but there will be a way. There'll be something there that works for you. There'll be something. Just try putting pen to paper. Doodle, doodle and see what happens. Because sometimes you'll doodle and shapes will come out of the doodles. You can put music on. You can find a piece of music that represents the emotion that you're trying to kind of unpick. It might be that you just need to feel sad for a bit. Sadness is cool. Sadness is fine. If you need to feel sad, feel sad. We have to stop repressing these things that don't quite feel comfortable in the body. They don't feel comfortable because they've not been dealt with yet. They're just waiting. So why not move into it and feel an emotion? And what does that mean to me? What does it do? Okay, yeah. And then it moves. Trust me, it moves along. So maybe you need to feel angry or frustrated, or maybe joy, happiness, maybe it's peace. Find maybe a piece of music that connects with one of those emotions. Play it, give yourself, 3 minutes? The time it takes for the track to run. Unless it's like an epic Freebird style or Bohemian Rhapsody, you need a good 10 minutes then. But get a piece of paper, get a pencil, do pencil on the back of a beer mat or something, whatever. But if you have some supplies, you've got any colours, or get yourself a notebook or a blank piece of paper and some colours. Just sit, breathe for a sec, let the music play, and pick something up. Don't think about it. That's the power. Don't think about it. Just pick something up, pick a colour up, just do something. Make some marks. There's no judgment, there's no assessment, there's no exam. Make some marks, and then something will come up. And that is a powerful way of storytelling without having to use words, because you will have something on paper that will explain and express what it is you're going through. And I've done that so many times with people over the years, and then they're able to articulate a little bit better when they look back and they go, oh, I did that because that reminded me of that. And you start to tell your story in a different way, but you need sometimes something to start the process. Different kinds of poems. There's loads of brilliant templates for different kinds of poems that will help you, like acrostic poems, when you write down a word and you use the first letter of each of the letter that makes up that word to start the first line of each part of your poem. So there's some brilliant ones that we've done over the years with Mojo. There's lots of different ways that you can storytell. It's such a great thing to explore. It really is. And just think about all of the brain chemistry. It's what we want. We want to be able to lean into and experience some of the emotions that are trapped and maybe that you've been trying to hide and repress for so long. Just safely express some of that so that it can move through. Emotion, energy in motion. Move it on through. And we want to experience some good stuff. We want to bring back the memories of things that were great and joyous and peaceful, and we want that brain chemistry, right? So we need to balance the two, process and feel some feelings that are waiting to be felt, but then lean into the stuff that feels good as well. It's balancing, juggling, learning to surf, my friends. And storytelling is a massively helpful tool. Storytelling stimulates social experience even when you're alone. So if you're watching a movie or reading a book, or you are thinking back for a memory, it stimulates those parts of the brain, and it can help massively reduce anxiety. It can help build those social bonds and social connections, even if you're not in the room with people at the same time. Builds bonds, builds trust, builds empathy, builds compassion. This is powerful stuff, Why are we guided away from this stuff is my question. Why are we not embracing this from a very early age with open arms like we used to? Why is storytelling not the most powerful tool that we have to hand down from generation to generation? Why are we taught to, look away from that, that's a bit silly, and we don't do that. We should really be taught this from a very early age, just how powerful. And now we've got the brain science to be able to explain why, which is cool. So I think I'm going to leave that there for today's session. I'm going to wait for my guests to delve a little bit deeper into their own personal methods and their own ways to tell stories. But I would encourage you, if you haven't already, you can have a look back at my Batman origin story. So I have My first couple of episodes of this podcast and also on Substack, there's a written version. Everyone has a Batman origin story, right? You know, everybody has one. So what's yours? Something to ponder on, and how would you express that? What is your Batman origin story? What are the components from your past that make you who you are today, good and bad? If it was a character, how would you depict that character? What would they look like? Give them a backstory that relates to you. Just think about it. Think about how that is for you. And if you feel drawn to, do a little bit of jotting down, create your own character, do a little bit of a backstory synopsis, and it's really, really powerful therapy. I've done this lots of times before, but when I was actually speaking it to camera to do the podcast, and when I was writing it down for the Substack, so cathartic, so powerful, so useful to me. And you know, some of the things in my origin story, yeah, it's all childhood stuff, isn't it? It's all childhood stuff. And you know, I had a lovely childhood. Like, I've got no complaints really. But you look and you dig below the surface. I mean, I get on my whole family. We're all fine. We all get on really well. But being able to do that and dig to do this origin story, you start to weed out, you start to unpick some of the monumental learning points that you've had, some of the things that made you feel elated, that made you feel your first experience of love, your first experience of overwhelm, of anger, of sadness. Some of the things that friends and family will not even have given a second thought to and didn't intend in any way. You can assess how much of a huge impact somebody's words or lack of words, somebody's actions or lack of actions had on you in your formative years. And it's not about placing blame or accountability, or it's about understanding what makes you tick, and it's about understanding what has been part of your programming that makes you think, feel and behave in a certain way. And if your thoughts, feelings and behaviours aren't serving you well, and if there are things that are happening in your life and patterns that are happening in your life that you're not comfortable and happy with and you want to change, the only way you can do that, trust me, the only way is the shadow work. You have to peel back the layers, you have to peel back the years, you have to go back and understand what it is that the root cause is and the initial programming that's gone in here. And you just have to uninstall some shit. You have to swipe up, uninstall some apps, the ones that aren't working. You think, oh yeah, that person, I locked that in for absolutely no reason. That person said something once and it became a core belief and I don't actually need it because it's not relevant. Let's swipe that up. Let's do a hard factory reset. You see? And the most powerful way to do that, in my opinion, is through therapeutic storytelling in whatever way that works for you. So Batman origin story, for me, that was the win. It helped me to process that stuff and really think about it. So go feel some feelings, go write some stories, see what comes up for you. And I'll be back in the next episode with a super special guest to take it one step further. Bye for now.